This is Dr. Jillian Hartley, and on behalf of Arkansas Northeastern College Histories, I am happy to be interviewing Dr. Christopher Heigle today. He has been serving as president of Arkansas Northeastern College since 2023. It is November 13th, 2024. Dr. Heigle, do I have your permission to record?
Absolutely.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about where you were born and how do your connections with Arkansas how did they influence your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. Is everyone getting the same questions?
No.
Okay, I was wondering. So I'm from Heber Springs originally, which is the central part of the state. We grew up with a large federal reservoir. We had a Corps of Engineers lake, and so it's kind of important to preface that. So I grew up watching what government investment can do for a community. It was really neat. And so had a pretty good idea that I wanted to go out and help the world at some point. I don't know exactly where that came from, but I started taking some classes at the local community college and built my confidence enough to transfer to ASU and thought, you know what, I'm going to go into constitutional law and I'm going to go and litigate for civil rights. That was my original career path.
And what was that community college?
It was Arkansas State University, Searcy, Heber Springs campus.
Okay.
So quite a ways down the system there. But again, so I'm seeing this federal investment. I'm going out and I wanted to do something for my community, and I ended up getting my internship with a congressman, Congressman Marion, who was a federal congressman and really big into agriculture. And so I don't know. He said, I don't know why you want to go to law school. You can do a lot more good with me. And he was absolutely right. And so that is, the weird thing is me looking and seeing federal investment did, in a way, get me to go into government relations.
Well, and this is going to kind of piggyback off of that, but can you describe a little bit about your family and share any kind of key takeaways from your upbringing that have also influenced your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, my family, both my father and my grandmother on my father's side and my uncle on my father's side all went to college. They all went to University of Arkansas. So I had some experience there. But my mother's side had virtually no education beyond high school for the most part. My mother has a GED. And ended up being a plant manager in Heber Springs. And so she's got a wonderful career and really an enriching career that I was able to see that all paths lead to success if you have hard work and dedication, obviously. But my father ended up was a pipeline welder. So my grandfather and father both were pipeline welders. And they did not want me to go out and work on the pipeline. They thought it was incredibly unsafe. My family obviously had struggled because my dad was gone for so long, months out of the year, every year. And he just didn't want that for me. So he said, you're going to go to college and you're going to go get a job in an air conditioner. And so I did. And here we are in a wonderful air-conditioned space. And I tell my dad at some point, Dad, I'm tired. I'm working a lot. And he says, son, you don't even have a real job. And so what I can say is you can do everything right, and your dad is still going to tell you it's just not quite enough. So, but to be honest, my wife always tells me his displeasure is what keeps you proving him wrong. So, and to the audience, I will say I have a wonderful relationship with my father. He's a great guy, but like many of us, I have a hard one who expected a lot from me. So.
Well, and can you tell us a little bit about your high school experience and some details about your education
we're gonna
before
move past
college?
That, yeah.
Do what?
Pass.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was not a strong student, and again, you can probably listen to me now and see that I like laughing, and so I was always in the back of the class and making jokes, and I had a few instructors, and I mean, you see people that are not living up to their full talent, but they are making very wise and funny jokes, and it takes an intellect to make a good joke, and so they were seeing me waste this talent, and after maybe the 10th year of someone saying you're just wasting yourself by not applying, and I eventually did. And so high school was, a training ground for jokes, unfortunately. That's why I say I started at community college. I had to build some confidence. I had to build some understanding for my family that if they invest in me, that I'm actually going to do it. So it really does help me when we go out and we talk about, students, how do we get them to the college? It's very easy for me to say, look, I don't know where you're at academically, but I can tell you you're no worse off than I was at your age. And here I sit with a fairly rigorous statistical research in my past, and so it takes. You never know what your aptitude is, and so luckily, high school was fun. College was a little more work.
Well, and can you give us some of your more defining moments from your college experience?
Oh, absolutely. No, not that one. Okay, so let's see. No, I joke. I got into college. I pledged a fraternity, and so I went through the traditional path. And my goal there was not so much to join a social organization, but I had figured out from watching successful people around me that they had networks. And so I wanted a network like that. I wanted to have some safety in going out to the job market and having some connections with individuals immediately. And that actually panned out. I know a lot. I'm a Sigma Chi. I know a lot of Sigma Chi's. And so, and while it wasn't inherently the experience of the fraternity itself, it gave me a place to be. And so I'm a natural delegate. I mean, I like doing that. I like communicating with people. I like working for solutions. And so I was voted for interfraternal council. And I sat on that council for 3 years through college, and eventually became the parliamentarian for the Student Government Association. And that was really the lead-in to going and, again, working for Congress and eventually getting a master's in policy and economic development. And that all started with 2 experiences at college. One, the interfraternal council, and the second was the parliamentarian.
So those things sort of drew you to public service.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Point of order, parliamentarians are cool.
Everyone I've known who's been cool that's parliamentarian.
That's right.
But here's the thing: you're drawn to public service, and you're working for a congressman, but you are eventually drawn toward higher education. Can you tell us how that happened?
Absolutely. So the congressman I was working for, Marion, who, again, at this point had turned into a mentor of mine. This was 2010. He announced his retirement. He had brain cancer. And so going into a pretty rigorous surgery, he was afraid he wouldn't have the cognitive function to represent the people of Arkansas like he needed to. And so he stepped away in 2011, and I looked around and had a chance to go and do some lobbying. And really, that was not why I had gotten into constituent work. I had wanted to work in the district and advocate for people's rights and connect them to resources and really move the needle for people. So I had a call from a state senator that said, "Hey, we need some help writing grants. Would you be willing to help us?" I was dating a beautiful young woman named Amber at the time who was in West Memphis, and this was a West Memphis senator, Senator Ingram. So I started working for the city and end up marrying that beautiful young lady and started working in Forest City and Wynn for Crossroads Coalition. So I had a retainership on 2 organizations, both the City of West Memphis for Economic Development and Crossroads Coalition for Government Relations and Consulting. Through that, I met a man named Dr. Coy Grace, who was the president of East Arkansas Community College. And he said, "I'm not exactly sure what you did for Marion, but I would like for you to come and do that for me." And I said, "Okay." I don't know that you do know what I did for Marion, but I would be glad. And so we had a conversation over what that would take. And it turns out what he really wanted me to do was just be very aggressive with advocating for fundraising, federal and state fundraising. So we went out and we wrote oh my gosh, what was the question?
Oh, we're looking at how you're getting into higher ed.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm not just jumping ahead here.
Good.
Okay, so we wrote a Title III grant, which in higher ed, it's a federal U.S. Department of Education Title III grant, and it was part of the higher education amendment of the 70s. And so that pot of money was non-typical for that year. It was 2013, and they had what was called a Part F funding, and so it basically increased the cap. And I'm mentioning this just in case there's any wonky researcher out there in the future that may want to know about a Title III grant. But it was a 2013 Part F, and we wrote it for student of a new database, and it was about a $4.1 million grant, $4.01 million grant. That was my lead into higher education. I had the chance to now go out and spend $4 million, and it's impossible to spend $4 million and not make incredible relationships and friends out of that. And so I was able to leverage that into a pathway to institutional research. And so that's how I got here, was just a few grants, and then I fell in love with higher ed.
So the grant writing leads you to student services, correct?
Absolutely, it
okay.
is. And so much of the argument in the grant itself was resonating with me. of wanting to work in constituent services. And again, I use the phrase "move the needle" so much. It's just such a colloquial phrase to say, how can we see that something got done? And so I saw that. I'm moving. I hear myself moving around. And so we write these grants, and I'm sold on it. And I realize, you know what? I don't want to just write grants. I want to go implement the grant. I want to change people's lives. And so essentially that's how that happened. Is I saw a path, and I thought, you know what? Data, which is again is about as nerdy as you can get, but data the story is in the data. And by disaggregating and looking at the data, you can really see where should we invest and where are we investing that we're not getting returns. And equity is intentional. And so whenever you put the dollars and the resources and the people towards a student group that needs more help, by definition, because the data has told you that, you're making the right decision.
Well, so you are at East Ark at that time.
Correct.
Can you tell us what led you to Arkansas Northeastern College?
I can.
Okay.
It's I don't know that anyone would believe me, but I got so tired of losing to you all. We were an aggressive little college, and every time we would do well, that was fine. But here was James Shimwell and talking about everything that was going on at Arkansas Northeastern College. You all had essentially mitigated the achievement gap. Y'all had industries just one after another locating here. Y'all were actually producing students to jobs. And I will tell you, what I've seen at a community college that was not inherently wrong in what they were doing, but there were no jobs, major sector jobs. And so a lot of what was going on at my previous institution is we would train individuals in an associate of arts. They would transfer to usually Memphis or Arkansas State and Jonesboro. And so there's an argument that without a clear delineated pathway to a job in your community, that you could inadvertently transfer all of your brightest and best out of your community at an early age and never to return. And so, but I'm watching what's going on in Mississippi County. And so at some point I call Dr. Shimwell and I say, and he knows this, if he's listening, he knows this, what's it going to take for me to get up there? And that was where the conversation started. And so again, I became a part-time grant writer. We got our federal eligibility, and since then, I have fallen in love with this place and the people, and it's incredible.
So your tenure in higher ed has been over a decade.
Correct.
So are there any notable people, any anecdotes or memorable stories you would like to share about those who influenced you? You've already talked about Dr. Shimwell, but are there any others who stand out?
It does start with Corey Grace. I have to mention Dr. Grace was such a calming presence at the college, and he was not what I would consider a hypercritical president. He was not in the weeds with everything, but he ran a very tight ship, and so his facilities were incredible. He had been a grocery store manager, and so he was really hyper-focused on making sure that when you walk through the facilities, that you're in a high-class location. That has influenced my tenure. I know that the expectation on our physical grounds have increased a little bit, and so it would be remiss to say that Corey Grace did not influence me in a very positive way. He also got me on the path to the presidency. He said that, hey, there's something here for you. Your personality would go well with this, and if you would just stay out of politics and keep your nose clean, that could probably get you there. And so that worked out. And again, you have mentioned Dr. Shimwell. Of course, he is a mentor of mine, and we had a great conversation leading up to this. We kindled what was already a very good friendship, and had many lunches together. And there was no expectation that I would ever be like Shimwell, because he had said, you're your own person. But I find myself sometimes saying things that he had taught me, and so you have to be very careful, not to become your mentors, right, sir? Let's see, what's the other individual I'd have to say that's just incredible has been Jim McLean, and that's somebody who's been at this college for so long. But you talk about people who are just kindred spirits, and he and I have such a compliance mindset, and so student focused, and again, both of us are in data, and so he's currently the vice president for our management information technology, and has had just an incredible pathway through that college, and you cannot take a step without seeing something that he influenced in some way or said no to in a budget meeting. But he's obviously someone who I still look up to and talk to very regularly.
And I'm hoping I can interview him.
I hope you can.
Because you're one of like 5 people who've mentioned Jim McLean.
Absolutely.
So while you're at East Ark and then coming to ANC, you're working on your doctorate.
Oh, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how your doctoral research influenced your approach to leadership, especially regarding community colleges?
Yeah, absolutely. I would, the joke is now that it just damaged me and I'm not as good of a writer as I used to be. But the truth is it flushed out any bit of weakness I had as far as my own academic pathway. You cannot make it through a true dissertation process without really getting in touch with yourself. And I tell people all the time, I probably got started on that pathway for the wrong reasons, but I finished for the right. It did not matter if I was ever going to become a college president towards the end, because it was for me. I was going to finish that doctorate for myself. And so what I will say is, I originally I studied funding policy, and as a person who came through government relations and economic development policy and funding policy specifically it's just right in my wheelhouse. And so I have a natural interest for that. And I will say to anyone listening, if you're going to get your doctorate, let it be in something you have an interest in. And so with that said, I was looking around at Arkansas colleges, and we have moved to a productivity funding model, which is a form of performance management, whereby colleges are funded based on whether or not they produce a number of credentials that exceeds last year's credentials. And so they are constantly competing against themselves. And there are other metrics within the model, but 80 to 90% of the community college model is funded on credential growth. So if a college does better with credentials, they're likely going to receive some money. And if they do worse, they're likely going to lose some money. It's capped at 2%. And so, but with that said, the study was all 22 colleges. We did a 3-year analysis. I did a multi-level hierarchical model that predicted essentially whether or not certain metrics impacted the existing relationship between credentials and productivity growth. So what we found, I say we, it was me and myself in this process. What I and the researcher found was that the inclusion of the low-income metric was the only predictor. We used 3 hypothesized predictor metrics. One was low income, one was non-traditional, and the other was minority. And so, of course, you, given the research and the literature, that you would immediately say that, well, these are all metrics that we know nationwide can cause disparity. And essentially, disenfranchisement is the direction we were going here. What we found was statistically it was low income. And so the other thing that it's relatively anecdotal, but it's not, and we have to talk about it, a researcher should talk about it, is that you have a larger presentation of poverty within your minority groups. And so just including the minority metric alone was not a predictor, because a minority without the income challenge is not a liability on the performance of the college. And when I say a liability, I hope the listeners know I mean that in the most generous term. It is not a liability. We love what we do. But when you're talking about losing money from not performing, it is in fact a liability, and that is a policy outcome. So we, with statistical significance, figured out that it was low income. And so really what I'm looking at now is how can, and my tenure proves this, how can we find more money for students, and how can we figure out how to alleviate tuition gaps for them? We raised rents on our farms immediately when I got here. It was within 3 weeks we started looking. We were I don't know how important these numbers are, but we were charging around $110 an acre for a 1,500 acre spot. Going rate was around $170, and so we put it out to bid and came out at $226. And so we went from around $158,000 in revenue to around $346 or so in revenue. I don't have the exact numbers. It might actually be $370 in revenue. But essentially, we over doubled the foundation scholarships. And so, and the furthermore, just a conversation that led to this facility itself, the new Wilson campus. This was donated by the Lawrence family, obviously, and was originally the Delta School, but the challenge that we have is now to open up this facility to all students in the county. And when I tell you that when you take a student who traditionally would not have had a pathway out here and you put them here and they see and they feel and now they want to perform to this level. And I've already seen it. We've already watched it in a few of our groups that we've come out here. And so I'm very encouraged that that I've inadvertently led to a place in my career where my research can hit the ground and I can do something good.
Great. And it is such a beautiful facility.
Thank you.
Yes, it is. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, because you came to ANC about the time of the pandemic, correct? The COVID-19.
It was, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So obviously it presented many challenges.
Absolutely.
So
I didn't shake anyone's hand for a full year. So.
So can you talk a little bit about student services, though? Because, a lot of people talk about the teaching challenges, but can you give us some examples of the student service side? How did ANC respond, and what are some of the lessons that anyone listening might learn from that response?
Yeah, absolutely. What we did find was sometimes I don't really want to, we arbitrarily create challenges in a procedure. And because a form's supposed to be signed a certain way or someone's supposed to see something before it's approved, we became so pragmatic. And if it did not make sense to the student and the student needed the mechanism to move, we just found a new way. And so a lot of times we were taking screenshots and sending things over that way, or we found ways to do forms that had traditionally been either a non-fillable PDF. It just shined a light on the fact that, there's a saying in higher ed, which is, simple is kind. We were not simple. And what we did was we became a lot more simple. And we found a little bit on the back end that we had gotten played a little fast and loose with a few things, nothing that caused any compliance issues and nothing that challenged any student data, FERPA issues or any of that. But we'd have to go in and fill in the gaps later with our data. So our application process had become very streamlined to the point that we missed some things. And so we'd have to go and call students, and it caused major issues for our registrar. And, but again, we were at a time being very team-oriented, very pragmatic. So I'm thinking of ways that we can communicate to, to future individuals about how we got through a pandemic for student affairs. And what I would say is that we didn't let anything stop us. We knew that students had to get into classrooms. We knew that this was a weird, challenging time for them. They were scared. A lot of times just the campus itself and the existence in a community college or in your academic pathway was a comfort and a tie-in to a community that at that point in time we were disassociated. And so, we were just glad to play that role. But I don't know that has any semblance on value for the future. But yeah, again, we just pulled out all the stops and we did everything we could.
Yeah, it's sometimes really difficult because when new technologies arise, sometimes people don't embrace them.
Yeah.
Would you say it's fair that the pandemic sort of gave everyone a nudge?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, that's right. Like a kind of a whiplashy type of nudge. Anyway, growth happens when you're out of your comfort zone. And we've grown so much, and we've since implemented a new database, and there were a lot of things that we've learned. We're implementing a Gensbar 1 system. We've moved from a POISE system. We've learned so much through the pandemic that we had different expectations, and so and the previous POISE system had worked because we were under generally the same model that we've been in for the last 25 years. We were no longer under that model. And so there was a heightened expectation that we were going to do something different with our online student-facing services. And so the J1 system really gave us the ability to start implementing some of that. And anyone listening from the campus that is currently implementing the J1 system, they're going to say, well, we're not quite there yet. And that's true. We're still dealing with challenges. But implementation, this is the second time I've seen an implementation of a large database. It takes years, 2 to 3 years before you can get even an idea of what normal looks like.
Can you describe a little bit about campus culture and what sort of initiatives and activities ANC uses to promote a vibrant, inclusive community on campus?
Should I start with the camel? Let's lead into the camel.
With the camel.
Okay,
it's
so
popular.
I went to a conference last week or a few weeks ago, and I presented the camel, and now I'm the camel guy. So, we speaking of COVID, we students had gone away from campus, and were really not returning at a speed that we thought was a post-COVID rate. We thought that things would go back to 2019 in 2021, and they did not. And so really, truly, it was an intentional act. And you and I both know this, but we were offering multimodal classes. And so we cut down on our multimodal, which are hybrid modeled classes, and it gives the students both the option to do either synchronous or asynchronous online. We were seeing, and I'll go on the record to say this, we were seeing some really poor student success rates. And in classes that typically would have carried a relatively high success rate. And so, and we had a large conversation as a campus, challenged the faculty to put together a model that fits better what you all expect in the classroom. We relaunched a hybrid model that is not entirely dissimilar, but far less popular. And so students registered in online on-campus classes at a staggering rate. And I had warned the Board of Trustees that this is going to happen, that we're going to change our multimodal. It's going to reduce some access, but we're, what's access when the student's failing? We're just setting them up, a lot of them up for failure. So we actually had a 10-student increase this year. So, and as you know, students are all around campus again. So that was one, is get students back on campus and let them feel the environment. The second part of that is I've challenged our student activities groups to just do more. And so we do like a Try It Tuesday, which gives our campus community the ability to go out and try, honestly, options that typically an individual would not go out and buy. Every type of sunflower or every discernible type of ice cream. And then we just let people try it. And so, and these are, we cannot lose sight that, yes, we have incredible wages in the county right now. We also have incredible poverty. And so a lot of our students would just never have opportunities to go and frivolously purchase items like that. But now they can go and try some things. And this comes directly from student requests of wanting to have more culture and more on-campus events. And so we have done some cultural events on top of our Try It Tuesdays that have gone relatively well. I would hope that we're still doing that, but I've not seen one in the last few months. But that culminates with Nikki Brown's request to bring a camel on campus. And that was a hump day event. And we had, and it's worth mentioning, we use a product called EdSights, and it is an AI chatbot that texts our students, and it builds a predictive model on the back end of how they feel and whether or not they're going to persist. EdSights measured our students, and they measured every client that they had, every school they had. They have 2-year schools, 4-year schools, a lot of universities, and we were the second highest student voice score. We scored 77, and Southern New Hampshire, which is a massive online, they scored 84, I believe. And so, to consider them, we have 1,400 students and they have 280,000. It's through the roof. And so I got to present to essentially that company and explain to everybody how we're doing this. And I think the camel resonated. I know that's a ridiculous thing, but when you are doing fun and exciting and keyword engaging things for students, they're going to do better. They're just going to do better.
Nobody walks by a camel without stopping and looking.
What is that?
Whether they pet it or not, but nobody just walks past and doesn't notice a camel.
Very proud to be the camel president.
Well, this is going to be a question that piggybacks somewhat off of your research, I think, because looking at ANC and the supports for underrepresented and first-generation students, can you give us some of the goals as well as some of the strategies that have proved successful?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of that was before me, and so I can't steal the thunder of Dr. Blanche Hunt, Dr. Shimwell, and these were all things that were put in place before me, but they are working. And so I would lead off with our community relations department that had originally housed our career pathways initiative. We've since reorganized a little bit, but our career pathways is essentially a state fund. It's a grant that we received from the state that allows us to provide tuition assistance books, transportation costs, childcare, to students who are custodial or non-custodial parents. And so it truly is a career pathways program. We have tremendous supports through our student support services and our Education Opportunity Center, and not to mention ETS, but that's not exactly what we're answering here, but our Education Talent Search is an incredible trio program as well. So we do have a lot of supports and one-off supports here and there. 100 Families is a new program that we're offering. We now have mental health counseling. We have a food pantry. We have a coat closet or a career closet, which is a place for individuals to come in and get outfits for their interviews. We do a lot, and so there's really actually I filled out a grant application a few days ago. And they asked what student services we had. And they said check mark next to all of, or check mark, and we check marked all of them except one was a follow-up career advising that I'm not exactly sure we do it, but we do our internship program. And so I didn't want to lie and say, yeah, but we do that. We do everything. So and we have such a high expectation among our staff and faculty. And so you all produce a lot of the work that we're doing. The ideas come from you all and say, hey, wouldn't it be great if? And then very likely we do it. And we try it out. And a lot of times these are not expensive solutions, but they are solutions nonetheless.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of community engagement, can you share any examples that demonstrate the deep connection between ANC and Northeast Arkansas? And also, are there any specific examples of how alumni play a role in supporting the college?
Yeah, well, gosh, they all work there. So there's that. ANC, well, it's hard to say that we're not connected to the community. It's a unique situation where ANC is we only have one county. It's Mississippi County, and that's the people of Mississippi County voted for us. We don't have our service area is not outside of the county, and so it's incredibly straightforward that that's who we work with, which means that we're not pulled between several county seats on the same night, to go to an event. It also means that when there's an event in Mississippi County, we're there, and so I'm most often I'm out in the evening at either a community meeting, a chamber event, a banquet, a gala. But the thing about colleges is we do receive state funds, and these are we employ individuals who have lived other places traditionally. Or we employ people who are just, committed to the community in general. And so, I want to bring up placemaking, but it's not exactly that. It's just that we have an expectation that we want this county to be a good place to live and work. And so, everybody in some way is involved in something. And I'm thinking about you yourself are involved in several of the organizations. And so, and I hope that you would do an interview as well, because there's a big story to be told with our museum initiative. But with that said, there's not just everybody knows what Arkansas Northeastern College does, and they know that they can rely on us to be at a meeting, to facilitate a meeting, or to host a meeting. We've had 2 meetings in the last month here on this Wilson location with Arkansas Economic Development Commission. One with the community development arm of their group that has hosted all of our mayors and had a conversation over, how can all of our communities grow and not just the industrial areas of Blytheville and Osceola. The other conversation we had was with the Arkansas Economic Development Commission as a whole, which is the governor-appointed group, and that's the jurisdictional board of the AAD. That is how you leverage assets, and you bring in and build relationships to help the whole community. Furthermore, just last night I was at a game night with Nucor that they had hosted to help basically explain what Nucor does for the community and who they are. And my goodness, it's got to be a best practice for industrial relations. It was an incredible event. My point is, I stood on stage and they invited me to come help MC. And for a community college president to get the chance to build a relationship with a company that over its life has given over $500,000 to our students through the Nucor Squared program, it's phenomenal. And I don't want to go anywhere else. So people are always saying, well, where do you think you might go one day? Nowhere. My goodness, who would go anywhere else? So, yeah.
And we even send students to Japan because of Nucor.
Thank you. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, there's, it's difficult to find anybody in this county that does not have a story or some sort of something to share about their experiences with this institution.
That's right. And the New Corps Ambassador Program has sent traditionally 2 students every year. It slowed down during COVID, obviously, but we bounced back strong. And I don't. It's normal for a university, a large research institute, to have connections that bring in these types of experiences. It's not normal for a community college, and it is so normal for us. We've been doing this for so long that it's just become normalized. But again, I'm somewhat of an outsider, even after 5 years. It's incredible.
Okay, so my next question, we're gonna get into your presidency a little bit more. So, were there any surprises or unexpected challenges that you faced, or when you transitioned into the role of president? Anything that you just sort of take a step back and go, "Oh wow, I had no idea this was going to be a part of the role or the job"?
The shorter answer is what did not surprise me.
Okay.
And that was that it was just a lot of work, and that's it was a humbling experience. And I had for so long thought, yeah, I've got the chops, I can do this, I've got good ideas, and I feel like I have a steady hand, and I'm an ethical, moral person, so I can do this. What I did not realize is that I am also somewhat stingy with my time. And so the loss of my personal time and my evenings and time with my family has hurt. And that was, Dr. Schimmel had warned me of this, and I really did not respect that as much as I should have. But there was some time between when I took office and when I'd been voted by the board. And I should have taken time off at that point and really invested a few weeks with my family. And we have gotten one Disney trip since then. And, it was worth it. It was worth it. But my goodness, it's been difficult. But the other thing is, many people would say the personnel issues and the challenges with leading that amount of people. I have not found that. It is one of the most rewarding things to have a good conversation with an employee that may be upset, and for them to know that you trust them, they can now build a little trust in you, and that you might have mitigated a major disaster with them. We are, and me included, we're temperamental. And so we often can very quickly react to something that it may or may not be important tomorrow. And so, and when I tell you, I thought this was something that I would deal with early on in management. It's not primarily a problem. It's every day. And so while I said it's rewarding, it reminds me that I'm always on. The joking me is really somebody I can save for interviews like this, and a few safe places that I can make a joke here or there. But nobody wants the funny guy president. They want someone with a steady hand and they can trust. That's what they expect.
And in the end, it all lands on your desk.
It does.
It does.
And the fact is when I just do it right the first time, it becomes a lot easier for me.
Well, so there's some challenges. Okay, so what would you say is the most rewarding or exciting aspect of serving as a college president?
Yeah, no, well, it's there's no more excuses. For so many years, I was the type to go and say, well, why did they make that decision? That makes no sense. And now I understand the political intricacies of what a decision means here. And helping out one person is truly could be detrimental to another individual. So a lot of respect now. And the other thing is, while I've always been generally a straightforward person, sometimes in this job, painful honesty is just needed. And it cuts through a lot of the angst. Just go ahead and be honest, and let's get on the same page. And that's one. But that's good. It's rewarding to again be able to be that and to say those things. And I don't know. I don't know what else I'd be doing. And here's the other thing. And I think we all can agree here. We're intellectually restless. And so working at a college gives us a place to explore. And every day is different. And we're in an area where we're safe to have conversations over theory and what it might mean to individuals. And I don't know that I could live in a world or be in a place where I wasn't intellectually growing every day. So
That's the great thing about a college.
it is.
Yeah,
It
you
is.
should be able to talk, discuss, debate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, let's go back to the challenges, though. I want
Okay.
to mention one. Facilities. Oh my goodness, I had no idea how expensive roofs were, and so I have a whole new respect for that. And and again, I would stand on stage, and I actually have, and mentioned that students need a place to feel like they're a part of something much larger than themselves, and they'll rise to the occasion. They will rise to the facility. And this is within the research of higher education, that you give them a place to be it reminds them that they're pursuing something much more, much bigger than themselves. To do that means that your facilities can't have mold on the walls, and they can't have leaks in the roofs. And so while we're working on those things, it's still very frustrating. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of resources. And our colleges in Arkansas are not funded in a way that would give us the ability to go and handle deferred maintenance. So an honest answer is the facilities are very challenging.
Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about technology, because technologies we've already touched upon played a role with, obviously, things like the pandemic.
Yep.
But how do you see technology influencing the future of teaching, learning, and accessibility at ANC?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We, of course, we're in the middle of our Gensbar implementation. I've mentioned that. That's going to change the way that interdepartmental functions work. And so when registration touches the business office, that gives us the ability to automate a lot of those functions. And so I see technology reducing the workflow for some individuals. I don't think it's going to lead to, because generally we are understaffed and by virtue of our funding, I don't think it's going to lead to a situation where we're losing individuals because of technology, but I do think it will allow individuals to be more effective and efficient, and so you can just do more with fewer people overall. And so while right now our product is what we can make with 200 people, we'll do double. We'll do double that with 200. So that I don't know. I don't really like the way that all sounds, but it's going to change things. In AI, I'd be remiss without saying AI. In it's something that we should all respect. It's a little scary, but when people say, "Hey, there's a new technology," and we're all a little curious about it, they absolutely expect higher education to lead the way in those tools. And so, a lot of colleges have stuck their head in the sand over AI, and no doubt it is a scary tool when you're talking about measuring the ability for a student to create to perform in a composition environment. But when you're talking about creating logical step-by-step arguments and checking yourself, there's a lot of ways the tools can work. So I've encouraged our faculty to be pragmatic with the softwares. I don't think we've turned away any new requests for anything recently that wasn't just very expensive. I'm thinking of one technology we actually did just say no to, and it would be to put our aviation program online.
Oh, wow.
But it would essentially double our tuition for that program, and I don't know. I'd like to find another solution, which I'd say also, we could build our solutions. That's something that I think the future of higher ed is going to require. Is that we just can't go out and buy a new solution every time we have a challenge. You just hemorrhage money that way. Invest in a coder, and let's go that direction. So.
Good. So you've already mentioned the Wilson campus. But I do have a question here for you to add some more about it. So ANC received this rather large donation. Can you speak to its impact and the opportunities that it creates for the college?
Absolutely. So we're sitting in a facility that's valued at around $30 million. It was the original home of the Wilson family. Which is a sharecropping company town. And of course, you could tell this story much greater than I can. But in any case, in 2013, Mr. Lawrence and his family started to extremely heavily invest in revitalizing the Wilson community. They turned this property into a private school called the Delta School. We're sitting around a central courtyard area with beautiful glass pods, a beautiful greenhouse, and a wonderful, what I call administration building, but it's truly a mansion. And when we're talking about what our students feel like. This feels like an incredible Ivy League school, and the beauty of it is it was designed for hands-on experiential learning. And so we'll be doing a lot of traditional ANC work right here at this campus. One of the questions I get a lot from the community is, well, what are you going to do with that facility? And the truth is we're already a college. We have an existing product that we produce, and we have a need for additional space. Something that I've mentioned to others, but it's not really publicly known, is that we have right across the street, Big River Steel has expanded to a new production line, Big River 2. On top of that, there's a new company called Heber. Both of those campuses are bringing in subsidiary industries to also support them. So we're at a place within the county where there's tremendous economic growth and a tremendous need for customized training for those workforces. So what we've been doing is sending those Big River and Heigle employees and others within our South County industrial area up to Blytheville. And it's about a 25-minute drive. In traffic, it's about a 35-minute drive, especially on Highway 61. So I came down and I talked to Mr. Lawrence about the chance for donating a facility, just any building in Wilson. Well, there's several that have not been renovated, but we thought we could probably write for a Delta Regional Authority grant or something, and the industries would love that. So I felt pretty confident coming down and asking for just something. The conversation apparently went very well, and here we are in this facility. It's the second largest gift of any community college in our nation's history, and so our foundation was honored by this gift. And our board of trustees, while we're naturally apprehensive of the size and scope, we're incredibly excited at the opportunity to operate through this space.
And it is something. And it's also raining a little bit outside, in case anybody...
Even in the rain,
Here's
this is
the
beautiful,
rain.
though.
Still
It's
gorgeous,
incredible.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so kind of doing some reflecting, but also thinking about the future.
Yeah.
So how do you think shifting market demands are impacting community colleges, and how do you see ANC responding to those changes?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question, because all we talk about is steel, and the truth is it's a larger conversation. It's a multi-market approach for growth in the county, and so we need healthcare, we need electricians, we need plumbers, we need steel industry workers. We also need accountants and business people, and so. It is a shifting market, and here's what my fear for the future is that no question that industrial jobs are going to become more automated. We don't traditionally within Arkansas or even the South and the nation as a whole, we're not very aggressive with our STEM education. And so what I'm seeing is that in the future we very likely are going to become an H-1B liability for visas out of state or out of country workers to come over that do come from areas. And I mentioned China and India, tremendous amount of engineers, metallurgists. If we do not figure out a way to produce our own engineers, the best and the best jobs that those industries produce are going to go to out of our country. And I don't mean this from a xenophobic way. I just mean, we in order for our area to grow like it should, and by design, and the reason that we put our tax money into our economic development efforts is for those jobs to go to Arkansas and, in some case, Missouri students. So.
Well, what is your vision for ANC over the next 5 to 10 years, and what particular goals do you have for that time period?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm a little apprehensive to mention it, but I generally feel pretty good about tomorrow. There's a press release. We have a governor's announcing a new workforce funding, essentially, but it's called Hired Track 2, and we have submitted an application with Partner Institute, Arkansas State University. So the goal is, let's start with the problem statement, is that we need more workers for the steel industry. We have done a really aggressive job. We've been incredibly aggressive at trying to get individuals from Mississippi County, fresh out of high school, incumbent workers, dislocated workers, into the steel industry. So we're not, the easy fruit's been picked, I guess, so to speak. So what we're looking at now is, well, what's the biggest bang for our buck to really, again, back to move the needle? Well, you put our program, which is trusted and proven with the industries, in a high population area. And so, again, Jonesboro, Dyersburg, somewhere like that, you're going to get a much larger return on your investment. And so what our partnership essentially does is allow our students it allows our program to be located in the engineering building at Arkansas State University, which is a completely new idea. But, ASU, to their credit, has become incredibly interested in servicing the steel industry for their research needs. And so, with respect, they came to us and said, hey, you all have fantastic partnerships, and can we partner with you all to add additional value? And that was the right conversation, and that was the right approach. We are territorial, and that is by design. And so we wrote for this pot of money. There's been a $10 million appropriation from Senator Bozeman to ASU that was leveraged for this grant as well. And so what we're looking at is essentially one day building a high school location in Jonesboro on the ASU campus that would have an Arkansas Northeastern College Associate of Applied Sciences and Steel Technology. I guess what the biggest value of that program is that ASU is willing to give us a 2+2 articulation agreement with their engineering department, which is all new, incredibly new. And typically a university wants a community college to teach for that pathway, for instance, Cal 1, Cal 2, Cal 3, and differential equations. And it's too rigorous for us. That's a whole new instructor that we'd have to hire just for those classes for a very low number of students. And so they're willing to teach that on the back end, because what they want is they want to take workers who have been out in the mills for a few years, who are now older, more disciplined, have a clear pathway of where they want to go, and some contextual knowledge of the industry itself. And they want to bring them to ASU and get trained for engineering. There's also likely going to be a management pathway if an individual is just truly struggles with math and science. And so what we'd see is, and they're going to offer that curriculum as well online. And so theoretically, a student can graduate with us from either the ASU location or from a location in the county, work out the mills for a few years, and then either take an online engineering degree or drive over to campus if you'd like to. I don't know. I'm thinking that's going to move the needle. We need about 200 more people a year.
I was going to say this will help fill that engineering gap.
It absolutely will. It
thing.
absolutely will. And I can't. I'm thinking, what's the solution? What is the solution? And the truth is we are somewhat landlocked by our one county priority. And that's okay, because the value here, and I hate to say this, is not for Craighead County. It's to get the students in Craighead County over to Mississippi County. We've got a Work Here, Live Here program to help young people, or I say young people, it's anyone that's working in a partnering steel industry, to receive 10% of their home cost. And that essentially wipes out the down payment for a lot of new home buyers. So I forget what the median age is, but the mode age is 24 for those homes, and we're up to, I believe, over 110 in the last few years, which is more homes that have been built than the last 15 combined. And so, when I say we've got to figure out a way to get more individuals trained for steel, and we've got to get them over to the county, that's why I say I don't know what else to do, but we're going to try to put this program at ASU. The other thing that ASU is willing to do for us is very possibly renovate a contiguous on-campus location, which is an old construction building, and give us our own Arkansas Northeastern College campus right at Jonesboro. I'm interested in that. It would have to be staffed at an incredibly low level. I will not spend any Mississippi County dollars in Craighead, but what we can do is we can build a much more robust pathway over to our industries, and that way, the pressure would then at that point be off our own students to say, hey, you have to go work at the mills to make this work. That's a really hard sell for someone who wants to go into graphics design or whatever it might be. And so, I'd like to give multiple pathways for everyone.
Well, outside of ANC, what do you envision for just the future of community colleges in Arkansas and just in the country in general?
That really all depends. And of course, we just had an election, and so I don't know. January is going to be a telling time for us, but I think that we're going to see Pell Grants expanded to short-term credentials, which very likely would help us. you're going to see a lot of accountability as far as wage growth. And so legislators are going to want to know that when you invest in an individual or a student performs completes a degree or a credential, that leads to meaningful wage growth. And, I don't know. We don't know what that might look like. And so we could all be surprised by what those metrics come out to be. I feel anecdotally well that ANC would perform in a model like that because we have the highest graduating wages of any college in Arkansas for the first 5 years of a student. And it's been like that for, I think, 7 years or so. And so I want to say that our students are going to do just phenomenal. But again, we're talking about a metric that measures last year to this year. And so, it really, if a student goes out and graduates and makes $150,000, but next year they only made $152,000, you don't see an increase in your metric. And so you're still competing at schools that graduate an individual that go out and make $33,000, and now they're making $35,000. Well, that's a percent increase much greater than the previous. And so it could be that a college is performing much lower wages, but much higher percentage values, and could outperform us. And so I don't know. What I would hope is that anyone that has to do with changing the way that we are funded would be hyper vigilant about making sure that when you run the numbers, the outcome that you are intending to get is what you get.
Well, and Chris, I know at some point you were the youngest college president. Is that still the case?
I've not heard otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah. To the listeners, I have a head of gray hair, so it's not. It doesn't seem that way.
Well, I had to throw that in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so final question: is there anything else you'd like to share? Any kind of final thoughts you believe are important for the community to know about you or your future at ANC?
I said it earlier, but I get surprisingly a lot of people who ask me, "How long are you going to be here? When are you going to go?" I don't want to go anywhere. I think I did a pretty good job at explaining why I'm at a community college and how I got here. I never intended to go work at a university, and to be quite honest with you, I don't tell people this often. I don't watch sports, so I don't even know how to communicate in a NIL conversation or at a D1 college, or a university. I just don't know how to have those conversations. But what I do know is policy, economic development, workforce relations, and government relations. And college president for a community college in Arkansas is right in the center of that, and so I'm really practicing everything I ever wanted to do in my life. And you mentioned who in higher education had influenced me. There's the individual that influenced me most of my career is my former boss, Marion. And so much of what I watched him be, I drove him. I drove him around. I was project manager for him, but I spent a lot of time in the car with him. And he would say to me, "Chris, don't be cute," because I joked a lot. And he was right, because the people, when you're doing the work, they don't want you to be cute. It's not a joke. This is real. And so to know and to be able to emulate someone who lived it every day, it's such a blessing. And if he was here, I'd be able to tell him that. But I guess the takeaway is that I take this very seriously. I have a great time, and I want our faculty and staff to have a really good place to work and to enjoy what they do. But I do expect excellence, and I expect that we find good solutions to bad problems. I don't expect us to sleep on issues. I want us to deal with things head on. And so, oftentimes I question myself, have I done a good enough job of explaining to the campus that while we're enjoying ourselves, that I expect greatness?
Well, it is a great campus, and it's a great place to work. I've been there over 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's been great. As somebody in a previous interview mentioned, it also seems like ANC has always had the right president for the time.
I've heard that,
so,
actually.
yes,
I think our board is very intentional at that. That was part of the conversation.
I think so.
They weren't ready to step away from a workforce-focused president, but they were ready for someone who was ready to take on the community development role and the advocacy role. And, it's an honor. And the other thing I would say is to have a group of people say, yeah, that's the one. I don't know. I hope everybody in their lives gets to feel that kind of trust.
Well, thank you so much for sitting with me today, Chris, and adding to our history. I know that you have had, obviously, the fewest amount of years because, a lot of people I've interviewed have been 20, sometimes 30, even one that had 50 years
Wow.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I know this is something that really helps shape and it shows how we've built ourselves and how we're continuing. So it's extremely
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.